Like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
No, maybe not. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So thank you all for coming. We can turn the heat down. We've got natural heat in the room. To start off with, we've got a presentation by, is Molly on somewhere?
Molly is.
Okay, Molly Graffin of Cornell Cooperative Extension. Did I get that right?
Molly?
Yes.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Update of latest findings about Sag Pond they've been studying. It's all yours.
Oh, great. I'll share my slides. Could someone allow screen sharing?
Got it?
Oh, yes.
Is it allowing you to share, Molly?
A lot of erosion.
Are you able to see this?
There we go. More button I have pushed.
Okay.
Yes, you're good.
Today I'm going to be talking about the health of Sag Pond and the research and remediation we've been doing in collaboration with the Peconic Land Trust. There's 4 aspects of the research and remediation we've been doing. First is we've been doing groundwater and surface water quality monitoring as part of a long-term monitoring plan. We've also been doing pilot and full-scale groundwater remediation using permeable reactive barriers. We're facilitating and conducting laboratory research to inform the work, and we're doing outreach and education to stakeholders and community members. So this is an image of the Sagaponack subwatershed. And the subwatershed spans across the Bridgehampton side and into the village of Sagaponack. Land use, as you know, is residential, agricultural, there's preserved open space and commercial properties. And what this map helps you see is the groundwater travel time, which is different colors in this map. So this is helpful to understand how nitrogen is moving through groundwater and entering our surface water. So for example, nitrogen or other contaminants that is added to the groundwater 10 to 25 years ago in that yellow colored areas, that nitrogen is entering the pond now. Or in other words, nitrogen that's entering the pond today is a mix of both fresh nitrogen and historical or legacy nitrogen. So groundwater travel time is relatively slow. We've been monitoring Sagaponack Pond since about 2021, and this work was done in collaboration with our collaborator Coastline Evaluation Company. The map on the left-hand side, every dot that's shown on that map is where we probed into the Sagaponack sediment and took a sample of nitrogen from the water that's within the sediment, and that water is called pore water. So we've created maps of the pore water nitrogen conditions, and we've ranked different shoreline areas according to what we found. So at Sag Pond, we found up to 16 milligrams of nitrogen per liter in the pore water and groundwater. And to give you some reference, pristine groundwater might have 1 milligram per liter or less. The average in Suffolk County Upper Glacial Aquifer is about 3.4. So in the Sag Pond area, there are significantly elevated nitrogen concentrations. And I zoomed into this shoreline. I've zoomed into this shoreline area that is just north of Bridge Lane, which became one of the priority areas that I'll talk about more. So as part of our long-term monitoring, we've also been doing surface water quality monitoring. So we have key stations where we continue to monitor pore water, and we're monitoring groundwater seepage rates in collaboration with Coastline Evaluation Company. We're looking at the nitrogen loading into the surface water. We're monitoring 10 stations throughout Sag Pond, which are shown by the blue dots here. We're monitoring water level height within the pond, and we will be monitoring groundwater table height using data loggers. And then we're also in 2026 going to be monitoring the bottom topography and sediment type of the pond. So part of the long-term monitoring plan, which will be happening in 2026, is that we'll be collecting data before, during, and after the ocean inlet opening. And we plan to share these results with the town of Southampton trustees, who work closely with the Army Corps of Engineers and DEC to decide when to open the pond. So our goal is to help support them in science-based decisions, potentially helping them include water quality data for pond management. So we will be focusing on that in 2026. So stay tuned for more data on that. Part of what we're doing is pilot and full-scale groundwater remediation using permeable reactive barriers. And this type of groundwater treatment requires a lot of site characterization, which means it's a lot of background work to figure out where this type of groundwater treatment is appropriate. So on the Bridgehampton side, along Highland Terrace, we did site characterization in March of 2025, and we did this using our geoprobe, which is pictured here. It's about the size of a pickup truck, and we use it to install wells on properties. And so at this site, we installed 7 temporary wells and 4 semi-permanent wells, and we collected soil down to about 40 feet below the surface. And we analyzed the soil for different things, including grain size and how permeable the soil is. And then we had a land surveyor come in and take measurements so that we could look at the groundwater elevation. So these wells that we install help facilitate very important data that helps design a permeable reactive barrier. So we look at the water table height, the groundwater nitrogen concentrations, the soil type, and we can calculate groundwater speed, like how fast that water is flowing. And the wells that are installed, once they're installed, it looks like the picture shown here on the right-hand side. We typically cap the wells with a 6-inch diameter plastic irrigation box cover, and that's flush with the ground. So it's not interfering with anything on the property. And what we do is we'll typically install these wells pretty deep, like for example, down to 40 feet deep. And then we retract them in 5-foot intervals. So I have a little schematic here that shows how we do that. We retract the 5-foot intervals, and then we sample every 5 feet so that we get a picture of what the aquifer looks like at every depth interval. So this is on the Bridgehampton side of Sag Pond along Highland Terrace. And we installed 7 temporary wells on the eastern side of the property and 4 semi-permanent wells on the western side of the property. So just to orient you, Sag Pond is that dark blue color, and the light blue lines here represent modeled water table elevations. So the groundwater is flowing perpendicular to those light blue lines. So in this case, it's flowing from left to right into Sag Pond. So this information is what we get from our profile wells that we do. So basically what you're looking at here is now I just flipped the orientation of the property. So Sag Pond is on the bottom of the photo here. And the plots that I'm showing are contour plots from the profile wells that we sampled. So from this site characterization, we found that at this site, it's about 10 feet until we hit water. The nitrogen concentrations ranged from 3.1 to up to 14 milligrams per liter. All of the samples we collected except one had greater than average nitrogen concentrations in the upper glacial aquifer. And about 33% or 1/3 of the samples had greater than 10 milligrams per liter. And I point that out because 10 milligrams per liter is the EPA drinking water standard. So anything above 10 is would violate the EPA drinking water standard. So the images that you're like the plots that you're seeing here on the x-axis is horizontal distance, and on the y-axis is depth below ground. And the bright colors show the higher nitrogen concentration. So this bright orange and bright yellow color show the above 11 milligrams per liter. So we collect all of this information because the permeable reactive barriers are a type of groundwater treatment that are really promising to help promote surface water quality. So they've been used in the Midwest US and in Canada to treat agricultural and fertilizer and septic derived nitrogen plumes. And they've recently been installed near impaired water bodies in Cape Cod and in Suffolk County. And they're used as an approach to mitigate surface water nitrogen pollution. So the schematic that I'm showing here, this red box shows like where a PRB would be situated, and then it intercepts the groundwater that's flowing towards the water body. And depending on the type of permeable reactive barrier, depending on the carbon type, these can last for years or decades. The way that they work is they're passive. So once they're installed, it just relies on the natural flow of groundwater. So there's no pumps or anything like that. There are no above ground structures. Once they're installed, everything is below ground. So there's nothing visible really at the surface, except you can see our monitoring wells like I showed you in that earlier picture. The microbes that do the reaction in these barriers, they exist naturally in the soil. And then we just provide the right conditions for those microbes to do the reaction that they do naturally. And wood chips or vegetable oil provides a carbon source, which allows this reaction called denitrification to transform the nutrient nitrate, which is a nutrient and can be a pollutant in excess. It converts it into the harmless end product, which is nitrogen gas. So for example, you and I are consuming our food and we're breathing in oxygen and we're releasing carbon dioxide. These microbes are consuming the carbon in the wood chips. They're taking in nitrate and then they're releasing nitrogen gas. So we started with a smaller pilot on the Sagaponic side at a residential property. We started with a PRB pilot. It was installed, I think, at the end of 2023. And we started with this installation approach using our geoprobe, where we drill down to the desired depth and we backfill with wood chips and gravel to create a column shape. And so these are showing some of the results from our initial pilot, which worked really well. Our upgradient wells, which are untreated groundwater, had around 5 milligrams per liter, and then our downgradient wells, which have treated water, had roughly less than 1 to 2 milligrams per liter. So we were getting significant nitrogen removal. And then based on that pilot, we wanted to expand into a more full-scale version of the permeable reactive barrier. So we were awarded a grant from the Southampton Community Preservation Fund, and Peconic Land Trust contracted Cornell to manage the PRB installation and monitoring on an agricultural property just north of Bridge Lane on the Sagaponic side. So this is actually currently being installed. We started off by doing a demonstration of this approach for a local well drilling company, and then the local well drilling company took over the installation At this point, we're about halfway done, and we're hoping to begin monitoring in the first quarter of 2026. And this is just a schematic of what the full-scale barrier will look like. So using this approach where we create a column shape, we're creating an array of columns and then creating a line of that up gradient of the wetland. So another aspect of what we've been doing is laboratory research, and I've been working with the Center for Clean Water Technology. So looking at a different type of carbon, which is vegetable oil that can be injected into the ground. So our main question for the lab work was how does the carbon concentration affect nitrogen removal, and how does it affect the permeability of sagoponic soils? So we want to make sure that we're not reducing the permeability of soils by introducing this vegetable oil. So we looked at what's called an emulsified vegetable oil, which is an EPA-approved soil amendment. And we mixed that with water and to create different concentrations, like a high, medium, a low, and a control, where there was no carbon input. Then we added nitrogen-rich influent to mimic contaminated groundwater, and we were collecting the effluent or the treated water. And so we found, based on this lab experiment, that the concentrations between 1 and 10% carbon represent a really good balance of giving us the best nitrogen removal while limiting any permeability decline. So we used this information to go back into the field. And in that original pilot PRB that I was just talking about, we expanded on that and added an area called Zone 3, which is where we did an injection of 6 injection points using this emulsified vegetable oil. And so we received an EPA permit to do this, and then we did the injection alongside an engineering firm at the end of last year in December. So the photo on the left-hand side shows what it looks like during the installation. This approach is very minimally invasive compared to the column approach, which requires more excavation. This approach is more less invasive because it just requires drilling down to depth and then injecting into the soil. So there's actually no permanent structures that are left. You just inject the vegetable oil and then retract and inject and retract, similar to what we did with those wells. So we were able to do 6 injection points in 2 days. And the photo on the right-hand side shows what it looks like after the installation. So you really can't tell that anything is there. The last thing that I'll talk about is it's, my pleasure, and, one of the reasons why I agreed to do this presentation is I love talking to community members and doing the outreach and education aspect to our stakeholders. So we give a yearly presentation. The Peconic Land Trust and Cornell gives a yearly presentation to the Sagapon community. And I really like to stress, this area has become a hub for this type of research. And it's really exciting because the community has been supportive and we've been able to get funding for this work. But it's a really important area. As you all know, this pond is special. And the reason why we're focusing on it is because the shape of the pond, it's got an extensive shoreline and it's very shallow. So there's a high ratio of shoreline to the pond surface area. The land use is largely privately owned, residential and agricultural. So we've been able to get access, and thankfully landowners, property owners have allowed us to do this work. There is a significant nitrogen problem in this area. Like I explained, the pore water and surface water nitrogen levels are about 16 times higher than what is considered healthy. And the water table here, we have salt water coming in from the ocean, but that actually helps focus the fresh groundwater. so that it is at a depth that is treatable with this type of technology. And we think that the pond is significantly impaired, but it has not reached an irreversible level. So we give the yearly Zoom or in-person presentations in collaboration with the Peconic Land Trust, and encourage property owners who do have shoreline access to potentially allow us to do some of the site characterization work, especially in the areas where we find that it's going to be a high priority to do some remediation. We want to encourage property owners to update their septic systems to prevent further water quality deterioration, and update their fertilization practices to prevent future water quality problems. And then we talked to community members about donating to the Restoration Fund, which helps support this research, and highly encourage everyone in the community to stay informed and attend these yearly presentations. And if anyone reaches out to me in particular, I can go over a lot more detail about this, but I just wanted to give you guys an overview of everything that we've been working on. And if anyone has any questions, I can take that.
That's great, Molly. Thank you. We have a public hearing coming, so I think the questions can be posed privately. They've got your email address. But this is very interesting. I wasn't aware. I was aware of part of it, but that's pretty good. Yeah.
Do you have a flyer of what you just showed us?
I've created some flyers and outreach documents. I can share those. I could share this presentation if you'd like, and then you have my email, so please reach out if you have any questions in particular.
Thank you.
Molly, I was had the pleasure of actually hearing your results under the South Fork Land Foundation presentation you gave. So you actually are taking out quite a bit of nitrogen, which this presentation doesn't show, but you have incredible, encouraging results that's happening just from the short period of time that these PRBs have been implanted in the land, correct?
Yes, so the South Fork Land Foundation, that was the Highland Terrace property that I was highlighting. So we did get the Town of Southampton Community Preservation Fund grant to move forward with the PRV on that site. And we're estimating that we'll remove about 900 pounds of nitrogen per year with that one. So it's not installed yet, but that's that is our anticipated nitrogen removal. It's definitely a significant amount. And then everything that we've been doing on the Sagaponic Village side of the pond is very successful so far.
Great work. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Appreciate you coming.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a public hearing on agricultural housing for the Topping Farm LP. Great, thank you.
Everybody. Anthony Pasca for Topping Farms LP. And I know we talked about this a little bit last month, but since this is a public hearing, I may backtrack a little bit just to let everybody know, fill in the record. I want to mention too that Topping Farm LP it's a partnership, but it's been the partnership that's controlled this property for a long time. And representatives of Topping Farm LP here. Looking, they know Tinka Topping, and it's our Jenna Topping, who's now the general partner of Topping Farm, and Chris Moore. Tinka's been living on this property since the late 60s. Jenna grew up there and is now back to living next door with Chris. So this is definitely a family project, and as residents who are going to be as close to the staff housing that we're talking about today, they're also here to enthusiastically support their own application. So this is as you all know, a multi-generational farm, and we talked a little bit last month about the goal that Geno's had for quite some time to really preserve this farm forever. And it's been a goal of hers. And when I first met her, this was back in COVID, we were all working from home. the goal was to come up with a plan to preserve this farm in perpetuity. The development rights were intact at the time. And her two cousins, Jagger and Gretchen Topping, also owned pieces of the farm fields that were surrounding the Topping farm. And so it took us about 4 years to put together the first phase of that plan, which was working out a long-term agricultural conservation easement on the property. It was started when Mayor Lockheim was enthusiastically in support of it, and Mayor Tillotson, you showed your support. You became the mayor way before we finished the closing with the town, but at the end of the day, all three cousins, Gretchen and Jagger, along with Jeno, were able to work out a plan with the town of Southampton to do a bargain sale, and there's a charitable component to it, but it worked out. And at this time, Topping Farm now also owns the former piece that was Gretchen's property. So it's been a little bit more of the land has been put under the same name. Jagger still owns his piece, but he allows Topping Farm to use it as part of the horse operation. So it still continues to be a long-term family affair. The phase we're at now is sort of the just as important, which is to make sure the facility itself can endure longevity. So it's one thing to put easements in place that restrict the use to just farming use. It's another to make sure that the farm itself is going to be viable for the next generation and the next generation. So what Jenna wanted to do with this was to make sure that the facilities themselves were upgraded, modernized, and brought into as much code compliance as we could. I mean, it's a pre-existing farm that goes back to way before the village was formed, but there are codes in place. And so we spent time looking at the codes and trying to come up with some improvements and plans that would allow the facilities to be modernized and made a bit more code compliant. The buildings themselves date back quite a long ways, but we have sort of dated the timing when they were moved to the current location they're on as being 1969. That's when Tinka's home was moved to its current location, and she's been living there ever since. We believe that the two buildings that are the current staff housing, which is what we're converting into the new staff housing, were also moved at around the same time. Can't say with certainty that that's true, but it was at some time between 1962 and the mid-70s, because that's where the two aerials that I provided you last time show they were in a different location in 62, and by the mid-70s they were in exactly the same location they're in today. So you have the aerial on the survey on the screen, and the buildings that we're talking about, which is the existing buildings, are in the location of the L-shaped building at the lower corner of that diagram. And if you remember when we talked about it the last time, the agricultural easement that we did with the town contemplated this use. And so when we negotiated with the town over the terms of the ag easement, their typical ag easement doesn't allow for agricultural housing. They can modify that, and they do sometimes. But when we talked to them, we said, let's just draw the ag easement around it and exclude this location from the ag easement, so that when we go to make upgrades to it, we didn't have to go and get their permission in addition to your permission. And they went along with that. And so you can see the sort of line that curves between the indoor riding ring and the lower part of the property. That's the division line between the ag easement and the non-ag easement portion of the property. We didn't look for building department files from the town. We can't find anything that dates back, that precisely dates to when these buildings were put on the property. Those seem to have disappeared. There are some references in the 70s to zoning board decisions that suggest that the buildings were already there in the early 70s. But there was no specific building permit file that we could locate, and Rhodey looked for them too and couldn't locate anything in what the town turned over to the village. But they've been there, and the two buildings that we're talking about replacing have been in fact used as staff housing since the 70s. So we're talking about a 15-year period of time where the proposed staff housing that we're asking for is replacing an existing staff housing that's been around for 50 years. Again, I can't tell you exactly how it started, but based on family recollection, we know that that's been the case for at least 5 decades. So when we get to talking about impacts and the character of the property and the character of the community, I'm going to ask you to keep in mind that it is part of the existing character of this property and this community that there has been staff housing in this exact location for the better half century, basically. So the proposal that we are talking about is we have the two buildings that are non-conforming in almost every way as far as code construction. They were built way before we had building codes and ADA codes and sanitary codes. So we are proposing to take those two buildings and to bring them into as much conformance as we can with the village's current agricultural housing law. And not every community has an agricultural housing law, but Sagaponic does. And I don't know that you've ever actually used it, but we're gonna use it. We're gonna try to use it. And we can't comply with every single requirement of it. So I mentioned last time we will be seeking variances from the zoning board for those dimensional requirements that we can't fit into. But we're working with John Woodsma on figuring out what the exact variances are that we need, and we will present those to the zoning board. Some of the variances are what I would call paper variances. So if you see where the building's located, it's close to an internal lot line. So that counts as a setback, but it's a setback from our own property. And on the other side, it's a setback from Jagger's farmland. And so we do think that the zoning board will have reason to look positively on those variances. We're not wasting your time on asking for your special permit approval with the idea that there's a good chance that we're not going to get those variants. We think the opposite's true. We are also bringing the sanitary system up to code, bringing the ADA compliance up to code. So in addition to your code, to try to bring it as much into conformance with your code as possible, we're also dealing with the other codes at the same time. One of the requirements of your code is to limit the number of buildings. So we originally had an idea to just replace the 2 with 2. And John suggested that it's going to add another variance to your list because our code only allows 1 building per 25 acres. To have 2 buildings on less than 25 acres would become a more significant variance. So we combine the functionality of these 2 small cottages, for lack of a better word, but we might even call them huts, now into a
Hey now.
there's nothing wrong with huts. I mean, let's just say that the new building is going to be a much improved space for the staff. I want to put my application into work for her and live in this new building because it's going to be very nice, and it should be, because there's no reason why staff should have to live in less than modernized standard homes. And we are complying with the remaining kind of building requirements of the code, which is you can't have more than 6 people in it. So we're conditioning. It's not designed for more than 6 people. And we imagine that the village's approvals will all be conditioned on limiting it to 6. By bringing it into your purview, and instead of it being a non-conforming use, it becomes a conforming agricultural building. You also have monitoring facility, because part of your code is to monitor that it's actually being used for staff housing. So that's another benefit to sort of bringing it under the village's purview as opposed to leaving it in its kind of pre-existing non-conforming, who knows, state. I thought we would kind of just run through kind of the criteria that you guys have to look at. I'm not going to take the time to go through every single one, but generally speaking, there are two different sets of requirements. One is the general conditions and one is the specific conditions that apply to ag housing. So the general standards that apply to all special permit uses, which you guys have probably dealt with many times before, they all revolve around whether the property is suitable for the use, the particular property, in terms of size, its access, access to roads, circulation, things like that, buffers, those kinds of considerations. Is the property the right property for the type of use you're proposing? And what impacts will it have on other residences? So, Cory, do you have the aerial that I gave you? You don't have that in.
I don't have
We
it
have.
scanned.
Okay, you all have that.
But they
There's
do
a
all
set of
have it.
aerials, and it's probably the best way to understand why this property is not going to have impacts on others, because when you look at the area and the surrounding properties, it's all protected farmland or residences that are somewhat related to this property. So to the south, as I mentioned, you have Dagger's farmland, which is being used as part of Topping Farm. South of that, you have the Topping Farm preserved farmland. And then in the corner of Gibson, you have Gretchen's house. Right? And then you have at the corner of Gibson and Daniels, you have another plot of Topping farmland that's been preserved in perpetuity and is all under the same umbrella. Then going north from there, you have Tinka's house, which is connected. It's a separate tax lot, but it's always been connected to this property. They share a driveway. I think they even share an address. But when you go up her driveway, you keep going, you end up at the horse facility. So that's where you end up getting to the staff housing. And then just to the north of that, on the other side, you have General and Chris's house. They've acquired the house next door to Tinka's house. So they are the next direct impacted neighbors and obviously support their own application. And then to the north of them and northwest of them, you have the Foster Farm, which is also a preserved farm. I'm not going to speak for Lee as to whether she supports or doesn't support the application, but I hope she would. And that the Foster Farm has allowed our farm to use some of their area for turnout and other uses. And so there's been a cooperation there for many years. Their ag reserve also does allow for agricultural housing, just coincidentally. So that's, when you think about the character of the neighborhood that is part of, we have all these preserved farmland, and there is some allotment for agricultural housing within the ag easements. So as far as impacts, and then should mention too, on the other side of the riding ring are Jagger's house and Christian's house, Christian Topping. Jenna reached out to both of them and they both support the application. So we essentially have a surrounding little community, and there's preserved farmland and general support. It kind of makes this, I would say, the poster child for the type of situation where you want to have something like this done. If you're going to use this code, it's not on this property. It's hard to imagine what else it would be used for when it's replacing something that's already there. And not to overstate this or understate it, but with a horse farm in particular, you do need care. You need staff to be around. It's not a tree farm that you can plant and allow to grow for years largely on its own without 24/7 supervision. They're horses and they do need constant supervision, so it's a type of agricultural use that screams out for some account for staff housing to be present at all times. The other set of special permit requirements that we need to comply with are the special standards under 24560. And Brian brought this up the last time, that's part of what you need to make findings on, that we can comply with these general requirements of 24560. Some of those requirements have to do with more ongoing supervision. So there are provisions within 24560 that say who can stay in the staff housing, how do they get certified, and sort of reaffirmed every now and then that it's still being used for staff housing. But there are a couple of specific dimensional requirements that I mentioned we can't meet on their face because of the dimensions. So one of the requirements is that the buildings can be no less than 200 feet from any side or rear lot line and 150 feet from any front lot line. Because of the configuration of the pre-existing tax lots, we just can't meet them. But that's something we are absolutely prepared to take to the zoning board and explain how the surrounding properties are all well suited and create perhaps a better buffer than the mere 200 feet would, because there's really little chance of any other homes ending up within 200 feet of this property other than the ones that exist already. And they all support the application. So we do think we're going to be able to get past that hurdle. So I don't know that I have much more to, I don't want to beat a dead horse. That's a bad expression to use. I don't want to beat the dead horse, but
Well, it's a wonderful thing
We
that
love it.
they've been.
so if I keep talking, I will be.
Yes.
How many other variances are you need besides the one from location?
Don't know for sure because John has to make that decision first before. For example, there's if we don't have the turn down, and he'll identify. There might be a technical GFA variance, even though we're not really making it a smidge bigger. It may still need a GFA variance. It's definitely going to need the setback variances. There's also that provision I mentioned, which says no more than one building per 25 acres. He's going to have to decide whether that is a variance or not. I don't know, because it's one building for less than 25 acres, but I don't know if that technically creates a variance or not. But that'll be up to John, and then we will, whatever he identifies as a nonconformity, we'll take to the zoning board.
Mayor, can I ask a couple questions? Sure. As usual, Mr. Paskey, you do an excellent job for your client, so it's always a pleasure to see you here. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Could you give us just maybe, if you have thought through it a little bit, on the preview for the dimensional variances? Because I'm guessing the argument's going to be that the dimensional variance to the side yard at least is going to incorporate that 771 SAG LLC in
Yes.
some way.
Yes.
Can you give maybe just a brief preview to the board what that argument might be?
Sure. The main arguments are going to be related to what is the purpose of the setback requirement, and the setback requirements are really there to protect residences, right? Not to protect other farms or other open space farms. And so our argument is going to be, one, it's not getting any closer to any residences than what's already there and being used for staff housing. But because of the unique, I'm going to say buffers, agricultural buffers that have been created by the ag easements that we did with the town a couple of years ago, that when you look at impacts, the zoning board always looks at impacts. There are no impacts when it comes to these setback variances, because it's a setback variance to an invisible line that then continues in reality onto the farm that we're continuing to use and is to preserve forever. It could never be a house there. And the same goes for the interior setback line that runs along the southeastern side. That's a setback line to our own property. you know, it's never been formally merged, the two tax lots, this is lot 7 and 8 on the tax map. But functionally, they're used as one parcel with the same driveway. And the part of the outdoor riding ring is on that portion as well. So there's always been this blending. It's a tax lot line that doesn't really exist in reality.
So that kind of tees up my next question. Well, first, is 771 said, is that a preserved property?
That's the one that's right down there, right? Yeah, that's what I was referring to as Jagger's property. It's his LLC. When we did the closing with the town, the whole deal with the town was a 4-party deal. The 3 Topping cousins, Jeno on behalf of Topping Farm, Jagger on behalf of 771, and Gretchen Topping, all doing 3 separate, they're separate ag easements because they were separate owners, but it was all being done as part of one preservation effort. And the town, I'll tell you the secret now because it's all in the past. The town said we have $10 million. You guys figure out how to split it up.
Right, yeah.
Really, they couldn't care less how it was divided among the cousins, and so they treated it as one big purchase, and that they held one hearing on it to cover all 3 easements. But because there were 3 separate owners, we had to do 3 separate conservation easements.
And you hinted at it before, the artificial line between the 2 properties, the Topping Farm LP property and this property, even when you look at the aerials, it looks like the subject property is landlocked essentially.
Yeah.
There is no pole to the flagpole. Is there a driveway easement or access easement? Because that is one of the conditions of 24960 C, that each such building or other structure shall have access to a paved street or driveway.
Because they're owned by the same entity, we can't have an easement over our own property. That's a rule of law, right? So if I tried to record an easement today, it disappears today because you technically can't have an easement over your own property. However, it'd be very easy for this board and or the zoning board to say, if you were to ever try to split those 2, the ownership of the 2 lots, it would be subject to creating an easement. I'd have no problem with that. No, I don't think anybody envisions ever splitting the 2 properties because they have been used functionally together for as long as anyone can remember. So, and I actually don't even know, and never figured out why 2 different tax lots were assigned to the properties in the first place. That must go back to some deed sometime long ago that
Probably did it different times.
yeah, but it's been under the same control for a long time, and so I just don't know. I never figured it out, Brian, like why they assigned 2 tax lots to it, but it is maintained in the GIS system as 2 different properties for whatever that's worth.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Pascal.
Welcome.
Seems like a logical next step to a beautiful project. I don't know, you probably weren't involved, but many years ago, there was a different plan to reconfigure those lots and the board turned it down because it would have resulted in eventually, several more 9-bathroom houses. And the whole view would be lost. And for the community, it's great to have that bucolic look of the property. And I understand that the horses require special care, so hopefully this can all get worked out.
You know what was interesting, Mayor, is that when the town negotiated this ag easement, Mayor Lockheim had sort of initiated a request on behalf of the village to really try to focus on preserving the actual horse use of the property, which is unusual. I've been involved in a lot of agricultural preservation efforts where the focus is more on food production, but because this was a historic horse farm, that was the focus and the views across it. And so there were agreements put into the ag easements not to block the vistas, which is not in all ag easements, but it is in ours because we were happy to not. Part of what Jenna wanted to accomplish by this was to preserve those vistas forever. So when the town asked for it, it was not a big ask on their part because it was something that she planned on doing anyway. Right. So.
And the horses will be able to use the new bathroom.
Yeah, sure.
I guess we'll open it up to other questions, statements, I guess pretty much statements. Would anyone else like to? It's a public hearing, so if anyone wants to speak.
It's a thumbs up.
Anybody else want to get up to the podium? I'm gonna shoot on it. Sure.
Lee Foster, 698 Main Street. I'm just enthusiastically saying, why don't you guys do this today? Absolutely.
Thank you. Anyone else? Board have questions or statements?
Motion to adjourn the public hearing.
Second.
Great, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Yep.
Just so that you're clear, so at February's meeting, you can then take action on this application.
Right.
And I assume that whatever action we take will be conditioned on.
Subject to.
Absolutely.
Right.
Zoning board.
Right, I would like
We
to
accept
know,
that.
at that meeting, I'd like to know what variances they need to go to.
Yeah, that'll make sense. Just gotta run through the building inspector first.
Tony, you're gonna go through that again next time.
With the zoning board.
Right.
That's.
Yes. I just want to,
Thank you all.
thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, old business site plan application of the Winnie Trust, 31 Hedges Lane.
Let's keep the good times going. Hi, good afternoon, Melissa Dedovich, Peconic Environmental Associates, on behalf of the British. I'm joined by Onis Gurig from Tim Haynes' office. Melissa Rivas is a partner at Hollander Landscape Design. Kelly Kalbacher from the Rayner Group, and Carl Ben Pass is our attorney. And we're here, so last month we were here and we got some great feedback from the board. I just want to let you know that since that time, we did make some minor changes based on the feedback. The tennis court now is completely sunken. So we corrected that. So now we meet all the applicable requirements. We reviewed the same thing with John Woodsma. It actually results in a reduction of 141 cubic yards having to be exported from the site. We also wanted to state that we're not going to do any work at this time within the conservation easement. We provided a copy of the conservation easement to the village for your review, but at this time, we're not planning to do anything. I do know that the Peconic Land Trust recently did an inspection. They were very happy with how status quo is right now, so that's good. We also were asked to provide a Holland tree analysis, which we also provided. If we could show that. This is not it. Nope. It's a planting plan. There's one that has the trees with the, and we have what is there currently, the trees to be removed and the trees to be planted. Miss Rivas is here to address any concerns, but the net is we're going to end up with more trees, of course, say a gain of, yeah, it's a net gain in trees. And we also had Kelly and Ben Guardiola from the Rayner Group provided a detailed response to the questions and concerns of the village engineer. And so we're here to answer any questions that the board or consultants may have. What is
The landscape plan was looked great. I mean, you've got some substantial tree material going in. So it's not like you're stripping the property, you're actually doing a pretty nice job.
We're actually, well, I think one of the comments that were, there is a construction going on next door, and one of the comments I've been hearing from certain people are, we don't want to see it. And there's nothing against anybody, but they really wanted to bulk up the plantings over there.
Okay, questions from the board?
You can go through planner and engineer.
Okay. Who wants to go first? Rich, would you like to?
Sure. I don't have a whole lot to say. Rich Warren on behalf of the village. When we looked at this application the last time through, we really only had two questions, both of which were addressed by the applicant. One was the tennis court that is, you can see it's on the south side of the property. It's meeting the accessory structure setback, but it's required to be sunken by 4 feet on the surround of the tennis court, or it's required to meet a 150-foot setback. And the southern side of it, actually the retaining walls that go around it ended, and they had a sloped landscape lawn area that was leading to the tennis court, which wasn't meeting the requirement. So they've changed that plan, and they now show a wall that goes around the tennis court, meeting the 4-foot sunken requirement. Therefore, it meets the setback requirement. The only thing I did not see in the plans, but I don't think you need it for the part of your approval, is they should, when they apply for the building permit for this, they should just confirm with John Woodsma whatever the requirements are relative to the acoustical barrier that's supposed to go around it for sound attenuation pursuant to the code requirement of 245-34T. So that's something that they can work out with John Woodsma in terms of the building permit. The other part was that, you know, with the original submission, they didn't have a lot of details relative to landscape. And there are some significant trees on the property. And now they've identified, you know, the trees that are going to be removed, and they provided more detail relative to landscape. So I believe that that actually meets the landscape plan requirements of 245-68C4F of the village code. So I really didn't have any further comments relative to that. It's a type 2 action under SECRA. The village, you know, if you're satisfied with it after you hear from, you know, Kevin Peterman, you should decide whether or not you need to hold a public hearing or whether or not you waive it prior to granting site plan approval.
Thank you, Rich. We have a question for Rich at all? Anybody? Okay, Kevin, I guess you're up next.
All right, great. Good afternoon. Kevin Peterman from LKMA as the village engineer. We have reviewed the revised application materials, and our review focused on the site plan prepared by the Rayner Group dated January 1st of 2026. We've raised several concerns in our December 9th review memo, which requested modification to the drainage design and sunken tennis court design, among other items. The applicant's January 2026 submission addresses these concerns and depicts catch basins in the sunken courtyard, as well as window wells. However, there were no drainage calculations provided for a few drainage structures, namely DW1 through DW12. So it's unclear what size those structures are or what sort of runoff they will be containing. Similarly, there was no calculations provided for the tennis court drainage system. And so that is pretty much our only comment here. We recommend that the applicant include these calculations on the plan and resubmit for review. The current application, as was mentioned, no longer seeks landscaping improvements within the conservation easement. This area will remain as is. The total area of disturbance remains unchanged at 1.72 acres, and as such, a stormwater pollution prevention plan is required. The applicant has already submitted a SWIP, which was reviewed and approved, and so the applicant is instructed to just keep that SWIP report updated with correct drawings, including a revision log outlining changes to the plans. This was already mentioned as well, but the revised plan indicates a net export of approximately 1,800 cubic yards. This is about 141 cubic yards less than the previous version of the design, and it does seem reasonable given the revised tennis court design, which is now sunk in at least 4 feet around all sides. Outside of these items, I am available to answer any questions the board may have.
Board have questions? Any questions? No?
Would it be possible that we get, we're scheduled right now, we've been to pre-application for ARB and we're going to be going on Monday. Would it be possible to get an approval conditioned upon providing that revised engineering plan to the engineer?
Yeah, we're anticipating that, giving an approval subject to, yeah.
Great,
Okay.
thank you.
No problem, I'll make a motion to
Yeah,
accept.
and Mayor, just for the record, you might want to read in on the, just from the now therefore, it is before the board, a draft resolution for its consideration. And you may want to start with the now therefore section that has four that sections and 2 conditions.
Okay. Dave, that in the exercise of discretion, the requirements of the public hearing is waived. Is that what we're after? Okay. In accordance with Village Code Section 245-69D, and being that the property is within the historic district, the conduct of a public hearing is deferred to the jurisdiction of the Architectural and Historic Review Board. And so I'm going to read all these.
Well, that was the main one that I was had a question on, but you could go to the two conditions.
Yeah. Prior to commencement of any site work, drainage calculations, structure sizing for DW1 through DW12, as well as for the tennis court drainage system, must be submitted to the village engineer and/or building inspector for approval. And two, prior to the commencement of any site work, plans showing the tennis court setback compliance and acoustic barrier installation is compliant with the village code section 245-34T. That must be submitted to the village engineer or the building inspector for approval. Really straightforward stuff. Yeah. Okay. So I make a motion to approve that.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Preliminary subdivision application with Medlin here. Want to make the resolution to grant an additional 90 days from filing the final plat. We're still, the county is still considering making an offer on an additional offer on development rights. The Schwenks would like to wait to hear that offer.
Second.
Okay, we have a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. New business site plan application, 493 Sagaponic LLC.
I'll step up, Carl stepped out.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Steve Neroda with Harrison's on Landscape Architects. So we're here today, based on, you guys approved us previously on the site plan. Given the concerns about drainage, we were very cautious about watching the drainage on site as construction has unfolded. And some site conditions warranted some little bit of comment for us with how there's a little bit of ponding, water was sort of coming back toward the house. So we want to be responsive to that and come up with a solution that would work better and keep water away from the house. So that was the goal there. So two things came up, observing the storm events we had in the fall and how the site was responding to that. And then also hedges, especially on the north side, existing hedges on the north side of the property, a little bit bigger than were depicted on the survey. So when we got into looking at how we were contouring, we became very concerned about creating any damage or intrusion into the root systems of the hedges. So the site became even a little bit tighter north-south for us too. So we wanted to revisit everything there too. So that was the intent and the reason why we revisited the site plan. And what we're proposing today is our proposed solution to that. Main elements of the site plan. Should I speak or should we have Rich and Kevin speak? They have, I don't know.
Yes, they did. Why don't you let the,
Let them go
Rich,
first?
and then you guys can answer.
Okay, Kevin, your picture's up there. You want to go first? Kevin?
Sure,
Oh, really?
I can go first. Is that okay, Rich?
Sure, go ahead.
All right, great.
Thank you.
Rhodey, if you can just scroll to sheet L3.
L3.
Perfect, that's the one. Okay. So LKMA, Kevin Peterman from LKMA as village engineer. LKMA has reviewed the revised application material submitted on behalf of 493 Sagaponic LLC, who seeks a modification to the site plan approval previously issued by the Board of Trustees. A review focused on the plans prepared by Array's Landscape Architecture, last revised December 16th of 2025. The revised plans include a low retaining wall, about 30 inches maximum height, to the east of the rear terrace and the residence, as well as modification to the grading and drainage design. The addition of the retaining wall appears to allow for a flatter, more usable rear yard. Also, it is noted that the drainage areas on sheet L3 have been redefined to create smaller, more controlled tributary areas. The proposed improvements appear to result in a net export of approximately 4,425 cubic yards, where the previous approval called for 4,347 cubic yards of cut, We believe the additional cut seems reasonable based on the inclusion of the retaining wall in the rear yard. The total area of disturbance remains unchanged at 1.79 acres, and as such, a stormwater pollution prevention plan is required. The applicant has submitted a SWIP, which was previously reviewed and approved. The applicant is instructed to keep the SWIP report updated with correct drawings, including a revision log outlining changes on the plans. From an engineering perspective, we have identified several items that we think need to be addressed before our office can recommend site plan approval. The first, the design calls for several 3-foot, 6-inch diameter stormwater leaching pools to be placed in the sunken terrace of drainage area 3. So Rhodey, if you were to zoom in to the, I guess, the southeast corner of the residence, there's a sunken terrace over there.
Direction, sorry.
That's right. So we're at the bottom right-hand side of the residence. Yeah, we see a bunch of small leaching pools in that sunken terrace. And so we're just asking for the applicant to provide a manufacturer cut sheet or a precast sheet. We're not familiar with a 3-foot, 6-inch diameter stormwater leaching structure, so we just want to make sure that that exists. And so we're just asking for a cut sheet on that. Number 2, the design includes a proposed berm on the east side of the property. So if you were to pan over to the east side, Rhodey, to the east of the tennis court. So we see this kidney bean shaped berm structure, and it seems to create a localized high point. And so we're just asking the applicant to clarify the purpose of this berm. Similarly, on the west side of the property along the road frontage, there is another berm, but this one does not appear to be labeled with any elevations or contours. And so similarly, we are asking the applicant to, first label the contours and provide some insight on what is being accomplished with that berm. Number 4, we did observe an error in the drainage calculations, particularly in drainage area 6. We're asking the applicant to please clarify if the storage provided in this area is 3 inches or 4 inches, and to make sure the calculations reflect that. Similar comment for drainage area number 7. Next, we recommend increasing the depth of structures 7B, 7C, and 7D. As currently shown, these structures do not provide enough capacity to handle a 3-inch rainfall over the tennis court. So those 3 structures are for the stormwater leaching of the tennis court. Next, we're asking the applicant to reconcile a call out on sheet L3. According to the drainage calculations, structure 6A should be 10-foot diameter with 8-foot effective depth, but the plan says 5-foot effective depth, so we're just asking that be updated. That way there's no confusion when the drainage structures are getting installed. Next, regarding the drainage structures invert schedule on sheet L3.1, we did notice a discrepancy on structure 1C. The plans indicate that structure 1C should have an open cover to grade. We're asking the applicant to update the structure schedule accordingly. And lastly, we noticed a discrepancy on structure 6A. Drainage calculations indicate that structure 6A is 10-foot diameter, 8-foot deep, not 5-foot deep as suggested in the schedule. So we're asking the applicant to update that. Outside of these items, we don't have any further comments, but we are available to answer any questions.
Anyone have a question? Okay. No questions, so we'll move on to Rich Warren then.
Sure. I had the easy part of the review of this one. So, as you remember, this application, when it first came into us, the project, you've got a property that slopes from Sag Main Street at the low elevation going to the east. And the house is being placed in an area where you do have some slope, and the original plan had some significant excavation on the front of the house and on the north side of the house. And the applicant came in with a completely revised plan that got rid of that, and which was, I think, a very appropriate redesign of this project. In doing that, they still had to deal with a slope issue between the area where the pool is located in the tennis court and the back of the house, because you can't build a house on the slope. So they had a pitch from the pool down towards the house. And we worked through with them, trying, Kevin and I and the applicant worked through getting a drainage plan so this way water wouldn't pool behind the house. But I actually think that what they're doing here is probably more appropriate. It actually provides better protection of the house. To me, it's a relatively minor revision to the site plan in terms of the structural improvements. Placing a retaining wall a little bit further to the east than the patios that are behind the house that would provide a more level spot and provide ability to have some drainage. And I think it's gonna help protect the house. So from my perspective, I think this is a relatively minor change. And from a site planning point of view, the walls meet all the required setbacks from the village. And subject to them resolving, Kevin's questions relative to drainage, I think that this is something that should be approvable. So.
Any questions? No? Is this something we approve subject to, or there's enough that we need to wait?
Yeah, we probably need an updated sheet on the comments from the engineer. And if you could do that, we could consider that at the next meeting.
Okay.
To another hearing, we'll come back for it.
Yeah, just for a presentation about on what the updates are.
Is there any, if I could satisfy just a couple of Kevin's questions, that there's an opportunity to get a conditional approval pending an updated plan that Kevin would agree addresses the comments?
Which ones would you want to do?
So the first one, and Kevin, can you hear me?
Yes.
Who are you?
Mike LaRusso, Wall Design and Build, I work for the general contractor. So for the first question, Kevin, I'd like to address those dry wells that are in the sunken terrace. So what we are proposing to use there is actually 3 foot 6 corrugated perforated pipes that we would then provide reinforced concrete covers, precast concrete covers on top of. And then we'd be pouring a reinforced slab on top. So it's actually going to be an actual rebar grid over the entire drainage system there. The reason we had to make this modification is the footings that we had to put in for these retaining walls are about 8 feet wide spread footings that go into the sunken terrace. So we don't have the room, one, to excavate on the outside, nor on the inside to put an actual, 8 foot or significant size dry well. So that's why we made this modification. I don't see a world in which we're able to dig and get a pipe out of that. The reason the footing comes so far into the sunken terrace is when we excavated, we were too close to the property line. There was no room to continue to excavate and actually install drainage below the elevation of the slab. So that's where we came up with this proposed design. It's something I've actually done in several other areas. I've done it in Southampton. I've done it up the island where we use perforated corrugated pipes that equate to the same volume. And, in those scenarios, I've actually just put concrete covers over them that would be the same as any concrete cover going up over a typical precast dry well. In this instance, we're providing that as well as a reinforced concrete slab over the entire sunken terrace that obviously would have one, interconnected pipe between all the structures and then one cast iron grate to allow the water to flow through. As far as the questions with the berms were created as an avenue to redistribute the fill and not have to generate more cut and export more from the site.
How tall are they?
Steve, you want to talk on that? I'm not sure exactly. The elevation of the berms.
The front ones.
They're about 30 inches in total.
Oh.
They're very subtle.
I think the concern with the berm, both in the front and the back, is that there are no elevations indicated. So we don't know what they would be. And this site's got a complicated slope.
Yeah, everything we picked up internally on the site. So it wouldn't be draining towards a neighbor or anything.
Yeah, the other thing I'd like to point out as well is typically this site, we're significantly lower than the neighboring properties, significantly. You can tell by the contours and the way they come down from both side property lines. We're almost 4 or 5 feet on average lower in every part of the site than the neighboring properties. I don't see if we have spot elevations. I believe we do have contours that could kind of give you an indication of the elevation of those berms. But again, they're used as an avenue to redistribute fill and not have to generate more cut from the site. That's what we were trying is, again, and one other thing I'd like to touch on, the retaining wall that we are proposing, it is to break the grade. It's also to offer some redundancy to the drainage in that area with the rear patio. So there is a portion of that rear patio that has finished basement space underneath. The previous
approved plan had shown our low spots and where we were actually catching this water a lot closer to the patio. By introducing the wall, it lets us push that grade back and create some redundancy, allowing us to create positive pitch from the patio and catch the water about 20 or so feet from the patio, rather than having our failed point be adjacent to the patio that has finished basement underneath. So that's another reason why the wall was introduced. And obviously, you know, we had an additional amount of cut that we had to attempt to redistribute among the site to avoid trucking it out.
And for the berms, the east berm behind the tennis court, we have contours shown. What's your name? Oh, Steve Merrick. The berm on the east side of the tennis court, the contours are shown. It's a 2-foot high berm. And on the west side, the same concept, and just trying to create a 2-foot high berm. Part of it is losing some of that cut and also creating a little bit of undulation on land. It was a simple solution to having a lot of soil that we're trying to reuse, and also create a little bit of a rolling aspect to the land.
Well, Kevin, this is coming at you kind of quick. If you're not comfortable with this, we'll hold it over till the next meeting.
That's okay. The berms, I understand, trying to, limit the net earthwork quantities, and, I understand and I can appreciate that. I don't think that 2-foot high berms located away from the property lines are going to have an impact on drainage patterns in the village, and so that's less of a concern. I would like to see some details on the proposed 3-foot 6-inch perf plastic pipes with concrete on top. What sort of plastic pipes are you using? Can they withstand concrete on top of them? Can they withstand stuff on top of it? Just a little bit more insight on that. I think I would feel comfortable in that regard.
You're gonna come back next time for that. Yeah.
And there's no chance that we could get a conditional approval from the board if Kevin notes that his comments were addressed.
Not for this one, because the site plan is so fundamental. If it was any other aspect of the procedure, I would probably say yes. The board would say yes, but in this case, just because this is a complicated site and some complicated changes, the requests are relatively minor, so we just have to have that one sheet updated to the engineer's satisfaction. And then they'll most likely be approved, because those are pretty limited comments.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for the presentation.
Thank you.
Yep.
When's the next meeting? When's the next meeting, do we know?
Where are you? 21st or 18th?
It was the 18th.
18th?
February 18th. 18th.
Cheers.
Okay, we have minutes, I read them.
No, you need to adjourn this application.
Oh, okay, make a motion to adjourn until February 18th.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, thank you. We have minutes from our last December 17th meeting. I read them, they look good.
Can I?
Any other-
Second, we're finished with Rich and Kevin, are we not?
Yes.
Thank you, Rich, and thank you.
Thank you.
See you.
All right, take care, everybody.
Nice to see you.
Thank you.
Yep, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yep, bye.
I read the minutes. I'll make a motion to approve them.
So did I.
Okay,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Great. Correspondence?
I'll go with this.
Police report.
For November and December, November, there were 3 abandoned 911 calls. 2. Abandoned vehicle only in December, 1. 4 accidents left the scene unknown PI. 0 and 0. Accidents, no PI, personal injury, 4 in November and 4 in December. 2 accidents undetermined PI in November. Accidents with PI, 2 in November, none in December. Aided cases, 2 November, 2 December. Burglary alarms, 20 in November, 22 in December. Carbon monoxide alarm, 2 November, 2 December. Fire alarms, 10 in November, 6 in December. 2 panic alarms in December. Ambulance calls, 6 in November and 7 in December. Animal complaint, the deer, 3 November, 4 December. DWI arrest, 1 in November. B&T arrest, 2 in November, 3 in December. Code enforcement's follow-up, 2 in December.
We know what those were? The code enforcement?
No, I don't. 1 disabled vehicle in December. 1 fire building, what does that mean?
It was a fire in a building
Okay,
that was over in town.
town line, okay.
Big fire.
A big fire. Oh, you're right, that big fire. Ordinance of noise, 1 in December. Partial follow-up, 2 November, 1 December. Pedestrian stop, 1 in November. Special event review, 2. That was probably the caroling. Suspicious incident, 1 in December. Suspicious person, 1 in December. Suspicious vehicle, 1 in December. Traffic, 0 traffic enforcement. Traffic hazard, 1 November, 1 December. Traffic stops, 55 in November and 27 in December. Unwanted subjects at premises, 1 in December. Utility gas, 1 November. Utility wires, 1 November, 4 December. Vehicle lockout, 1 in November. And that's it. So the traffic stops, 55 and 27, okay, I thought I didn't tell you that. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to know what those code enforcements were. Since I have never seen a code enforcement.
Well, I'll see if I can find out through there, maybe.
Just a matter of notice that the Southport Land Foundation property on the corner of Hedges and Fairfield is going to be reclaimed as farmland. So there's no regulatory action on that. Where the post office was, they're going to, we've given them the right to put the fence back up around it once the post office was taken out. So they're going to go clean up the property and they're going to farm it again.
Oh, the deer fence.
Yeah, the deer
Yeah.
fence, yeah.
The agricultural fence.
Agricultural.
There are some trees on the south side that they're gonna take out, clear out so they can farm the property again.
Right. Lighting code, we had a request from a citizen to tweak the lighting code a bit. Anybody have thoughts, comments? Where do they want them? Oh, it's in the.
Right,
Yeah.
I-
We
the
actually
email.
have the
Yeah.
correspondent,
Yeah.
I think. Do we have the correspondent?
You do?
You want to come up and say something, maybe?
That'd be good, you like?
Yeah,
Sure, come on.
please.
Hey, everybody, my name is Jerry Outerkirk, I live at 57 Farm Court, in Sagaponic. I reached out to Village with some thoughts on outdoor lighting. Rhodey was kind enough to remind me where the current code, is located, and I gave it a read through. And had a few thoughts. You know, I think from my perspective, enjoying it out here, them not being a full-time resident in the off season as much or more than I do in summertime. I think the outdoor lighting issue is far more noticeable when the foliage is down and the hedges have died off and the leaves aren't on the trees. And so it left me with a couple of ideas. And again, I leave it to the board as to the trustees as to their thoughts on enforceability and whether they think I'm on the right track. But first and foremost, what I think is most noticeable around our property is the number of properties that have their outdoor lighting on a timer that literally go on every single day from X to Y. And they absolutely shut off by the current code mandated time of 1 a.m. But they're not there 95% of the time. And so I don't know if that's a change to the code or simply a starting with a request to village residents that we not do that. I don't see any purpose to have your lights on, especially outdoors, all the time when you're not in residence. Moving on from that, I would also urge the trustees to consider the following. Right now you have that cutoff time of 1 a.m. Year round. I don't know about you, I'm very rarely up that late. So my suggestion would be consider changing that to 12 a.m. from June 1st to September 15th, when the vast majority of folks are out and potentially having parties or entertaining until later into the night. But consider moving that to 10 p.m. for the balance of the year. Just encouraging folks to turn down the lights a little bit earlier, especially when the foliage is down. And I think I talked to John about this a bit, but also, a lot of us might leave our lights on by mistake and not have them on a timer. And just making sure there is a good line of communication that allows, if I can't get in touch with my neighbor directly, maybe call the town and the town can reach out to the neighbor and say, hey, by the way, your lights have been on for the last 5 days. Would you mind turning them off? Possibly before a formal action goes out. I don't know. But I love it out here in the wintertime. I love walking around at night with my dog. And I hate when I see houses lit up. So I know there's certain cases that they're just violations. And I know the town inspector is looking into them. But I think any potential changes that might prohibit the use of outdoor lighting on a schedule and the combination of potentially thinking about earlier shut-off times, especially in the winter months, could make a huge difference and could allow all of us to enjoy the outdoors at night a little more than some properties all lit up right now currently allow. I appreciate you having a listen.
Thank you.
Okay.
I like this. I mean, I agree. I mean, I'm out at night and there's a lot of homes out here that are not are not residents that are here during the winter times, and there's lights on all night long. I think it's also an issue of code enforcement here too.
Right.
Which is the big issue, because a lot of these lights shouldn't be on. I see some of them on all night long. So I don't know. I'm sure we have a lot of code violations out there outstanding. I believe we do. How do we enforce these codes?
John, when we last did this, as you know, he works 3 days a week from 9 o'clock in the morning to 3:30 in the afternoon. So he's not able to see the lights. A couple of years ago, he was asked to go out on a Friday, Saturday night, drive the village and figure out who was in violation of the code. And he did that. Most of them got cleaned up. There are actually still some that have not been cleaned up yet. But if you want to do that again, I will ask him.
I would like to have him do that again. That'd be great. I mean, if people are in violation of the code, we need to let them
When it's
know.
brought to his attention, neighbors sometimes will complain and he will address it to the homeowner. We get 95% compliance before we have to call in Southampton code enforcement. So he's pretty good at that, but again, we don't know about it. So
I'll go with him.
But that's the way to capture all of them that are on. I mean, last time he did it, we probably had 25 to 30 properties.
But what about, so to Jerry's idea, I agree with it too. There's no reason why. I don't know exactly the timing, whether it's June 1st to September 15th, that's fine with me. People are opposed to that, but how do we bring that forward?
You mean the time that the lights have to be off, the 10 o'clock.
Right,
In the winter,
right.
change your code, and then you have to be compliant, and it's the same.
But again, it's gonna be the
procedure.
compliance
Mhm.
issue is that, you know,
Mhm.
if John goes out now, we then gonna have to go out.
I'm sorry, what is the good turnoff time now?
1 a.m. I'm guilty.
You know.
I leave a light on.
During the winter, I'm not sure why we couldn't move that.
It's very low.
I'd be in favor of considering that, move that. During the off season.
You want to move it back, but have one time that's year round,
Yeah,
instead of like
exactly.
11 o'clock. 'cause you
I'm
start
okay
to
with
get-
that too. I
It
agree.
gets too confusing.
I agree. I think,
Yeah.
I agree.
You know,
No one likes a light shining in their house, which is
Right.
what we have now.
Yeah, no, I don't like it either.
I would like to change the code and consider it, whatever it is. I think it's a great idea, Terry. I'm with you.
Another newsletter.
So if if you're out till 12 o'clock, your lights better be off when you come home.
That's a problem. A lot of people are coming out here from work or New York for the weekend, and
They have cell phone
they
flashlights.
like to have their lights on for security purposes.
It's not lights in the house, it's so much as the spotlights that are going out, you know.
Well, there was regulations on the wattage, the
Supposed to
location.
be down.
Yes, they are supposed to be down, so he could go out right now, and if the light is too high, if there's wall washing on the building, if there's uplighting in any of the trees or toward the building, that's all in violation of our code, which is probably.
Are there
more-
fines?
You know,
Yep.
Is there a fine? I'm not
It's
sure.
punishable under the general charging section.
You know, and a lot of the lighting is not from street perspective, it's
checkable.
from the backyard perspective, you see, so.
So, like, can we up the fines?
Well, the fines are pretty significant already. They are $2,000 per violation.
Oh.
I don't know if the Southampton Justice will assess that, but that's the maximum. If you get a maximum judge, maybe they'll assess that, but, you know, the other thing to consider is that this is kind of a combination, and it is an enforcement question, because even the maximum wattage on a light bulb, which I'm sure you see would be a violation, it's only 40 watts. That's a dim bulb.
The moon is brighter than that.
A lot of people have solar lights outside.
A lot of them are motion detectors too and stuff.
Yeah, those are painful.
But, you know, I would consider moving it back during the off season.
Make it 11:30.
Like,
Like, but I agree, like, during the summer, you know, people, you know, Dave, you're the big partier. So, you know,
Jerry asked for
you're the-
midnight.
you're-
Jerry asked for midnight.
Right,
Let's
well-
make it midnight.
No, but Bill was saying that.
He would like to make it one time. I think we do off season different. I think we do
Oh.
off-season. But what, especially when the trees are down in the winter and people aren't out here. They just have the houses are on remote.
And it's the darkest time of the year.
Yeah.
Ironically.
Dark is dark.
So what do we have to do? Do we need
Set a
to?
public hearing.
I
Okay.
need to direct Brian on what you want changed in code. He'll draft the local law. We'll place it before you next month. And we'll set a public
It
hearing.
also brings attention because a lot of people don't know there is a lighting code, so to be honest. So it would be nice, at least it brings it to the forefront for people to understand we have it.
That's what our newsletter's for.
That's right.
So what is the proposal then? Change the, accelerate the time from 12:59 AM to something different?
Yeah, I'm good with anything anybody wants until 12 AM or 11, I don't care. But I think off season is a good idea.
So David, are you proposing that there be two different time
I
frames?
do. I think because the summer is, you know, as a lot goes on during the summer.
So from May 15th to September 15th, and I'm using those dates because that's usually our seasonal.
Yeah. Right, do we have two different timeframes in the code right now?
No,
I mean, not standardized, but it's kind of spread out around it, but that's kind of our parking timeframe.
well, that's kind of our season, May 15th to September 15th. In our lighting code, there is only one time right now, it's 1 o'clock.
Yeah, I would change it to, I would put it seasonal, whatever our season is, that's fine.
So then
So
from May
we'll make it
15th to September 15th
Midnight.
at midnight,
Yeah, midnight, let's do midnight and see how that goes, and if that doesn't work well, we can adjust it again.
and
At
from
least it's
September
progress.
16th to May 14th, it would be 10 o'clock. Is that what you're asking the code to be revised to?
Yeah, I'm good with that.
You like that, Bill?
I think it's fine the way it is,
Would it not change it?
not change.
Bill's a night owl.
I mean, there's I know a lot of people that want you to turn the lights on so that the house is lit when they come home. And they come home after midnight, so.
Right.
I think I think it's. I wouldn't object to it going in the newsletters to say that we're looking into any code violations. Because I think you're right, a lot of people don't know.
Well, maybe we could just ask them to keep them off, and not
Ask them in the
go
newsletter.
towards the negativity of the code enforcement.
I think the leaves are on the trees till when? So, could we make it that too? We do October.
What time the streetlights go out?
Yeah.
Streetlights?
Can we do it when the leaves are off? So.
November
I
1st.
guess it's between November 1st.
I'm for anything to let the residents know we have a code. But because I don't think they know it.
Yeah, that's
There's a lot of new builds out there that have lights all over the place. I would also I'd be game to change it to a shorter time during the off season. That's me.
So can we change it to when it's winter? November 1st till under the trees come on. May?
I think 1 o'clock in the morning is awfully late.
Yeah, I agree.
I think we can just pull it back. Whether
To
it's
midnight?
11 o'clock. Bill, you think people want it on at midnight? Is that what you
If
want?
you want to cut it back to,
11.
11, 12?
Yeah, you think they?
Yeah, I wouldn't object to that.
Okay, well, we got, how about a year round to 11 o'clock? Try that, see what
Yeah.
happens.
That's good. Let's
And
do that.
publicize it.
Yes, we'll put it in,
Yeah.
it's a code change, right?
So pull it forward from 12:59 AM to 11 PM.
Let's do
Yeah.
that.
Year round.
Yep, okay.
11:01.
So what happens with all these parties?
Jerry, I mean, it's a great idea. I agree 100% with you. I mean, the light pollution is getting out of hand, especially with a lot of the new builds.
What if we make it midnight?
I appreciate that. Yeah, I appreciate you guys considering.
Because what about all these parties that people have? The code enforcement guy's gonna come and,
It's not gonna be a vote. It's gonna be us telling
John.
John to go
Yeah.
out in the middle of the night, see who's has the lights.
stop
on.
your party.
Yeah.
We do the music till.
I don't have parties,
Sure.
I'm just
Turn
saying.
off the lights and
You're
turn
gonna
off
get
the
a lot
music.
of feedback from these people
So the code
who
actually,
come out here to have a
Yeah,
good
so let's
time.
read the code. What's the
the
code?
code actually provides for an exception for mass gathering permits.
Okay,
Yeah.
there's the
Allowed
answer.
Already
There you go.
12:59 AM, so,
That's 12:59.
yeah,
Okay.
Okay.
Temporary light.
We got something good.
okay.
Good. What else? Does anybody else want to make a speech today?
Christmas trees, a couple of things. Yep.
Menorahs,
Lights,
bright
carousel,
menorahs. Yeah, it was better.
Are we ready to pay bills?
Yeah.
Okay. Make a motion to expend from the general fund $60,163.17. For a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Make a motion to expend from the tree fund $15,899.55.
$8.99.
$8.99. Thank you.
Second.
All in favor?
Wait a minute. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. You're good, you're good, you're
Make a
good.
motion to expend from trust and agency planning fund $4,567.75. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Make a motion to expend from the capital highway fund $754 and no cents. Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
And make a motion to expend from the trust and agency fund $2,500.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And no takers on speeches?
I'll just make a comment from as long as I can sit.
Sure.
I think that the possibility of John going out again and doing a ride around would be very fruitful. There's an awful lot of people that have installed uplighting
Right.
and that's on.
Mhm.
So I would encourage that to happen.
I think if we put in our next newsletter,
That too.
just.
I think we do both.
To people.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think
This is what we would like to do, and hopefully they would agree with us.
You get something out of it. Price is right too. Okay, I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Second.
You in favor?
So the next meeting's February 18th.
Yes. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming.
Thank you.
Get that. I need two things. Get your picture. Oh, my God. And then I need to get the last sheet, which I didn't print out for your people.
Do we have
Out of our,
makeup artist?
yeah. But, where you going, David?
What?
She's taking a picture of us.
Wait, I didn't get
Can we
my.
stand up?
Come on.
Want us to stand?
No, we sit.
Brody, you want me to take, you wanna be,
No,
you wanna be?
no, you're good.
Can we hug each other?
Oh, God.
Neighbors hug.
David was
Don't
also
you read
my
my
shower.
newsletter?
Yeah, I need a little makeup.
Makeup artist.
Oh, his bill. That's pretty. That's pretty good. Oh. I don't have my glasses on, so I guess
Now we
you're all
take a
right.
picture of you. Nope. We're all good.
Yeah, how about the office help and everything going in?
That's the
Next month.
I just gotta grab a little bit.
So.
You know, I felt bad for those one guys doing the amendment
Hold
site
on,
plan.
hold on, Brian.
No, you should.
Oh, we still on?
You shouldn't feel bad at all. That was a big deal.